Welcome to Guardians of the Data. I'm your host, Ward Balzerzak. Each episode will explore the passions, expertise, and real-world experiences of security leaders who are helping the future of data security and governance. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centra. To learn more about our AI-powered data security platform, please visit centra.io. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Guardians of the Data. My guest today has almost 20 years of experience in the industry. Like myself, he has been in the corporate world, in consulting, and in the cybersecurity vendor space. Currently a senior cybersecurity consultant, Tony Schimizzi. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So Tony, in your professional opinion, what's the biggest data security challenge that organizations are facing?
So I was thinking about this. I know it's the key question you guys ask, and a couple things come to mind. But I did hear an interesting quote recently that I think kind of starts to answer this, right? And it's companies no longer fully understand or control identity, access, and the data movement across their environments. And that's a scary statement. But I think to kind of directly answer what the actual challenge is, I think it still boils down to companies not doing the fundamentals well, right? And it's the fundamentals, the focus on it, right? Is being accelerated by the sprawl of threats and data everywhere and identities, have kind of, it's just all over the place, right? So they can't really control it well. So I think sticking to the fundamentals or companies that are failing to stick to the fundamentals is likely one of the biggest reasons for data security challenges. And you and I are always one of those people that are like, well, what does that mean, right? What does sticking to the fundamentals mean, right? So I'd kind of say respect to data security challenges, right? Some of the fundamentals that come in mind. Other guests have kind of talked about some of this before, but it's like simple things, asset management, right? Hardware and software. You gotta have visibility into what you own from a hardware and software perspective, right? You can't control or protect what you can't see. I think everyone would agree with that. And then on the visibility perspective, right, we're looking at like visibility from the network, visibility from the hosts, right? Central log management, whether you want to call it a SIM or whatever you want to, there needs to be at least some sort of central log tool. And then just fundamental security controls around protecting actual data, right? Like DOP, UEBA, and the overarching concept of like zero trust architectures, and then just backing that up with proper access management and data classification, right? I think those are really kind of the fundamentals. And people have gotten away from it, and I think that's really kind of like the big challenge nowadays, and specifically with data security, but I think higher in cybersecurity in general. I think a lot of people are chasing kind of the next news story, and they're kind of failing to forget the fundamentals.
Yeah. And we joked about this, but that's a wrap, right? That's the entire episode. Like, do the fundamentals, you're good to go. Knock it off, everybody. No, but let's dive into that a little bit, because I actually, how you ended that statement, I think is spot on, right? Like, people are always chasing the news stories because, let's be honest, they don't want to be in the news. But I think I would add to that, you got a lot of people that are chasing just the shiny objects, right? That new thing that's coming out, 5 years ago, when the proliferation of AI or AI-enabled technologies, really started, everyone's like, ooh, I got to have that. Well, why do you have to have that? Well, because it says AI. Of course I have to have it. And, we continue to see that, right? Oh, I need to have that Copilot. Why? Well, because Microsoft says I own it, so of course I got to use it. Right? I need to use Microsoft Copilot. So totally agree with that. A lot of people doing it, but let's bring it back to the fundamentals. So usually I ask my guests, what are we going to do about it? And I think the answer is do the fundamentals. But I want to ask you, Tony, because again, like myself, you have been in kind of the three personas in your career. You've seen this from all angles. So my question to you actually is, why do you think that we cybersecurity professionals, still continue to fail at the fundamentals?
It's a great question. It's not sexy, right? So I think that's kind of like the first thing, right? It's not it's not a sexy toy to play with. It's not a buzzword. We're not talking about AI. We're talking about like fundamental stuff like least privilege. Like make sure Ward has only access to get to the things that he needs to do his job, right? Um, I think that's just part of it, right? But then the fundamentals, and I'll kind of put my like consultative business hat on here, or even like my old school, like back when I was an engineer and architect and inside the companies. Sometimes the business and the business operations and the things that they need to do are going to trump any sort of security initiative control fundamental that you can put in place. And what ends up happening is a couple things. One, it starts to set a bad precedent that you can no longer kind of pull back. And two, it starts to create kind of like a slippery slope with it too. So once that's kind of set in stone, or once that precedent is made, the fundamentals start to lax, right? And I think that over time has kind of like snowballed into what you could some consider like, oh, this is corporate culture, right? This is the thing we do. People also have to remember this too, and this is going to hurt for most of our security friends, right? But like, you have to remember that security people within an organization are a double negative, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. IT people are like an operations expense, right? That cost the business money, but they can justify it, right? Because like, oh, the network's up, right? Oh, the application's up, the backend database server's good. The thing you need to make money that I run is up and running, right? So organizations will look at that as like okay, they cost me money, but they definitely make me money, right? Tell me where security makes you money, right? That's another tough part, is being that double negative where you're like, you are getting a pretty decent salary, right? And you arguably are not actually generating revenue, right? Now you can enable the business to generate revenue in a safe way, but likely there is no security initiative that I can think of in the 20 years that I was doing things that directly generates revenue. So I think those are a couple big things, right? It's hard to stick to the fundamentals when the business needs to make money. We've had this slide of corporate culture, and then just really understanding your position as a security professional, right? You are inside of an organization. You are a double negative to that company.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree on both points. I'd like to go back to your first point because I think that one's really, really important. The whole idea of business trumping, and it's going to happen, right? It's why there's a term called exception, right? It's why exception management is incredibly important. But, and I remember saying this to a leader once upon a time, if everything's an exception, you no longer have a standard, right? Like you're literally just flying by the seat of your pants, which is kind of what I heard you say in that statement. It's like, look, like I need to do this thing, I need to do that thing, and if you're not actually tracking them or pushing back or able to push back, that culture becomes do what you need to do as long as you justify it, air quotes, right? Justify it. Who knows what the justification actually is? Maybe the justification is I said so, or Sue said so, Johnny, whatever. Um, and you no longer have a standard, right? Which is one of those core fundamentals, right? Have security standards, your system standards. So now I'm going to ask you to put your consulting hat back on. Like, how do folks actually look to solve it? I mean, certainly having a standard, no kidding, right? People have to have a standard, but how do you think folks should pragmatically solve this everything deserves an exception piece?
I think the most successful way I've seen this in the past, and I've seen it, I would have loved to seen it in certain organizations that I worked at. I've seen it worked well in some of the organizations that I worked with, right, on the consultant side, is I wouldn't call it like a change management board because that's really undervaluing what they are, but I would call it like a risk council, right? A group of leaders from specific departments, organization, whatever it might be, right? You're taking the head of IT, you're taking the CISO, you're taking the head of marketing, head of HR, maybe a CIO, and some other person, right? That may be related to the business. And when these big situations come up, right, they talk it out, right? Because when you're the engineer or the manager, or you're actually the person inside the business trying to push the business faster, or the security person that's trying to understand the risk, right? We're not trying to slow things down. We're just trying to understand the risk as much as possible. And then I always say it's like yes and, right? Never say no but, right? It's yes and, right? Like, yes, we can do this, and this compensating control or something has to come in place. Those legal counsels or risk counsels, whatever you want to call them, that's where I've seen the most success, because what ends up happening is you have enough people from different departments with different motivations that all technically are aligned to the underlying umbrella of the whole business they work for, and they kind of hash it out. And I look at it from two ways. It's, I'm not getting involved in those specific decisions, right? There's no tool to do this, right? This isn't a tooling problem. This is a risk appetite, risk acceptance, risk evaluation conversation that 9 times out of 10 is at least CISO and higher. So that's where I've seen it be successful, and it tends to work out well, because you have two things. You can kind of go, let's say I'm the engineer or the manager or the architect, right? And I'm like, well, a decision was made above my head. They've talked about it. They've notated the risk. We just move forward, right? Don't take things personally. I mean, I think that's another thing that I learned in my career is early on, I'd be like, what is this guy? What do they mean? Like, this traffic can't be flowing to that country, or we can't be doing this. Like, what are they talking about? This has to be allowed. Like a great example is, remember like when like Box and Dropbox and all that stuff came out and people were losing their mind, like getting access to that stuff, and like those kind of things. And then eventually it kind of became like, these people are just trying to do their job. I'm just here to mitigate risk. If the people above me or have the risk appetite to allow this, it's I'm the conductor of the train. I'm just driving it, right? If you guys are building the tracks, I'll take it wherever you want me to go.
And security folks need to understand that. I mean, similar, on that, similar story I had an engineer in my last job. What we were dealing with a lot of, proxy rules, right? And I always directed my team, like, let's definitely ask questions, push back lightly where necessary. Don't just let the floodgates open. But if the business agrees we're going to do it, if they're going to accept the risk, and we're going to do it. And one of my engineers, a couple times, took it upon themselves to say no, right? Digging his feet. And I was like, man, like, all right, like, I get it. Thank you. You are thinking security wise. Yes, we can agree the decision that's already been made, to your point, well above your pay grade, is not the best. But guess what? It's the decision that was made. And we got the proper sign-offs. We have the proper paperwork. Just do it, right? Just do it. So yes, I think in some cases, some security folks need to put, maybe it's an ego thing, I don't know, but put that aside and just become business enablers, essentially.
Yeah, I think cybersecurity, like, and I've been one of those people that I kind of grew up in it, right? I think I think there's like, and I think we'll get into this later, but like there's like 3 tracks, in my opinion, of people that are in cybersecurity today, like as we talk today in 2026, right? There's the people that were migrated into it, right? They were kind of like the IT people, the infrastructure people, like those kind of people that are like, hey, they asked me to do a bunch of security stuff, and I just kind of migrated over, and now I'm a security person, right? And I should preface, there is no wrong or right answer here. All these people are equally important, right? There's the track that I took, right, which was I went to college, got a degree in cybersecurity, and just kind of day one at 21, and that's what I've been doing since, right? And then there's this kind of like new wave of where it's like, hey, you know what? Like, I did 10 years as a business something or whatever it is, and they're like cracking into cybersecurity now. My hat's off to them, because now it's a little bit tougher to get into and really differentiate yourself. But like those 3 different groups, all kind of have that same, like, once you get into it, they kind of have this like, it's not ego, right? I can't put it on ego, but it's like this, like, we know best, right? And we know how to evaluate risk better than you do. So that's kind of the pedestal some will stand on, right?
And that's fair. I think that's fair, because honestly, like, we from a technology risk perspective, Generally, we do, right? Generally, we know the ins or outs. As long as we understand the technology, I think that's the key, right? As long as we understand what's actually happening, a cybersecurity professional, it's kind of part of our job, should be able to assess the security risk better than anybody else. But where we generally suck is understanding business risk.
100%. And I think that comes with maturity, right? I think both sides of that comes with maturity. If you would have asked me 15 years ago when I was doing some of the cybersecurity work that I was doing, I would have been that guy that's like, no, we're not doing this. The policy states this. The standards state that. Nope, I'm not doing it. Go talk to my manager, right? And that doesn't create positive, like, work environment at all. Like, nobody wants to work with you, right? So I think over time, maturing and understanding, to your point, like be a business enabler, be somebody that people wants to come and work with and figure out the problem. That comes with time. And I think as you mature in that space, then you start to understand risk evaluation a little bit better too, because then you start to understand how the business operates. Like, one great thing for anyone listening to this, or like if you're just trying to crack into cybersecurity, or you've never even thought about it this way, like, very simply, if you want to understand how a business works, just literally ask AI, or if you don't, just go, how does this business make money? Right? How does this business generate revenue? And once you understand that, right, any risk that aligns, you're going to start to understand that you likely don't have that much of a say if you're going to slow down that process.
Totally. And actually, so funny, we've been talking about the first piece, which you said, business trumping, and I wanted to get to your second one, which was you called it security as a double negative, right? Or I'll call it, because I've heard it called this many times, security as a cost center, essentially,
Yep.
instead of actually an income generator. So I'd love to talk about that and pick your brain a little bit on there, because I've worked within a few organizations where folks have tried, right, to figure out a way to make security either directly make security part of the revenue generation, or at least show how security tightly aligns with the revenue generating processes, doesn't hinder them, and actually makes it happen. So in your experience, Tony, how have you seen organizations, good security organizations, be able to show that, hey, we're not a black hole of funds, we're actually helping?
The example that comes like directly right to the front of my head right now is when I was actually back on the customer side, probably a little bit before I jumped to the consulting side. So let's just say I was a little bit more mature as like an engineer and architect. And we were asking these questions, and what we ended up kind of figuring out, because the board was asking these questions, they're like, hey, like, we understand there's these security risks and we've had these audits, and they're like, well, what's going on? Like, how are we getting better? Right. So I say this, and it's not related specifically to cybersecurity, but it should resonate in all aspects of, like, if it matters, it should be measurable. Right. So that's where KPIs come in. Right. So I think it's more the second piece, right? So we can deliver KPIs to leadership to show them that the risk mitigation and the things we're doing to control the potential threats from hitting us, or the potential vulnerabilities from being exploited, whatever you want to coin it or term it, we were using those KPIs to take to the board quarterly to kind of show, like, hey, look, like, we're still essentially enabling the business because these things didn't happen. Or you could even take it a step further. I'm sure most people have sat behind a desk and oh crap, like so and so's got a ransomware thing, and we hear about it and it's a complete fire drill. We talked about that too, and we're like, hey, look, we had controls in place that isolated that machine. It got completely kicked off the network. All network traffic was killed. Like, it wasn't able to propagate. And oh, by the way, we could see the denies on the firewall from a visibility perspective to reassure you that this thing did not get out, right? So it's those kind of things, right? Is being able to have something that's measurable, that you almost go to the board, right? The C-level people above your CISO, because your CISO is going to be arguably 9 times out of 10 the lowest hanging person on that in that room, talking in that room to the board members. and they want to know. So they just need something measurable. So in the past, I've seen that is just really try to lean into the KPIs that you have. And sometimes, like I said, maybe if you have a little bit of a fire drill or an incident that you can reflect back upon and talk about how it didn't negatively impact the business and business was still operating despite the chaos going on, right? The factory was still running even though we were fighting a fire over here, kind of thing. Like sometimes that resonates to them, but to really, I don't know if I can think of a scenario off the top of my head where security directly enabled revenue generation outside of M&A conversations. That's the only thing I can think of.
I mean, I guess the only thing I could think of, just trying to brainstorm with you on that, is really more on the vendor side of the house, right? Like, obviously, if you're a vendor selling into a corporation, your stuff better be secure. So technically speaking, those security initiatives or whatever is revenue generating, air quotes. I know it's a stretch, but I'm trying to think with you on where it is.
I love the exercise. Yeah, I love the exercise because it gets us thinking.
You know, something else I'd like to bounce off you, and I don't remember where this was, and it doesn't matter, but I remember working with an organization and I was talking to some of their senior leaders, and I was kind of doing the same exercise you described about the board, like talking about, here's our KPIs, but also here's things we avoided, right? This might have been back during SolarWinds, actually, that SolarWinds fiasco, many moons ago. Yeah, everyone, that was exciting times for sure. But I remember bringing up something like that to some leaders and basically them saying, Ward, I hear you, but for us, it would actually be cheaper to let ourselves get compromised and deal with whatever than to spend, X, Y, and Z on technology people and, time essentially to prevent against that. Which for me, I think I might have been in consulting at the time. I was like, oh man, like hate to hear that. Um, what are your thoughts around that? Because that is definitely, you think about risk acceptance, like that's risk acceptance to a T right there. Like I'm going to accept not doing this because we can't, it's too expensive, whatever. What say you?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? So I think about it as like, so I'll start with kind of like a bit of an analogy, right? So obviously you can see the car stuff in the background. I'm a big car guy, right? So it'd be like having your car, your baby, and you're like, okay, we have to do this thing. We have to fix the engine or whatever. And somebody being like, I'm not going to do it. It's not worth it anymore. That thing's not going to run. And you're just like, it hurts, right? What you're defining is arguably probably what most of your listeners and most of us in the industry, at least that have some years behind us, right, is the typical business impact analysis calculation, right? Anyone that's like a CISSP or CISM or anything like that, right? It's like annual loss expectancy equals rate of occurrence time. I mean, that's all they're doing, right? At times the compensating control. So I don't fault them for it. As long as it's a trust but verify scenario, right? So I don't want somebody to kind of tell me that's like, oh yeah, we looked at it, it's just too expensive, and we're not going to do it, right? I would push back and be like, hey, like who did the actual calculations, right? Because sometimes this stuff is really hard to quantify, right? How do you quantify the risk that you're talking about from a business perspective and whatever it might be? So just understanding that process, not to be essentially a pain in the butt, but to more understand how, okay, that's how they're calculating risk here, right? And just being more in tune with how the business is running is likely how I would unfortunately have to deal with it, right? I don't think there's been a time where I was able to overcome cost, like being the main concern. Like it's very hard. Like if the risk is potentially a $500K impact, but the control to stop it is $2 million, it doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, unless it was, $500K per year, right? And it was a 2 million over a bunch of years. I mean, to your point, there's different things you got to look at. You definitely have to do a trust but verify to really dig in and say, okay, I hear you, but let's take a second or third look at your calculations and make sure we're thinking about this.
I want to see the numbers. I want to see where you got them, right? Because you'll hear some people nowadays, I don't even know what it is as of lately, but like I was on a call recently where somebody was like, oh, like a breach will cost you $12 million. And I was like, where did you get that number? And they're like, oh, well, that's what Google says. I was like, I'm not saying Google's wrong, but like, you need to kind of like talk, like what kind of breach, like where are you, what state, or do you have international operations? Like there's so many like pieces to that puzzle or variables that like people don't talk about. So like, yeah, I mean, where did you get that number, right? That's kind of where I'm like, where are you evaluating that risk?
Well, I think a lot of it, bringing it back to data security for a second, I think a lot of it goes back to also understanding the criticality of just that, your data, right? So an analogy one of my early mentors gave me is, look, I'm not going to put $1,000 fence around a $10 horse, right? Like if the system, the data, the whatever really isn't worth it, then why, right? Why do all that? Maybe, a basic firewall is good enough for that one system over there, but maybe you need a full zero trust program for this other environment because, oh my goodness, all the crown jewels are in there. Like that definitely needs to be part of the calculation for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a couple interesting things, right? Or right out of the gate. So like zero trust, obviously, a pretty loaded acronym or terminology.
That's why I said program, Tony. I knew you were going to catch me if I said zero trust, like architecture.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but it's like that's one of those words nowadays where I'm just kind of like how like AI might kind of like right now make some people squirm. Like zero trust for probably like the last 5 years, like is something that I'm always like I love talking about it. I love getting into workshops and things like that with customers and identifying like what it truly means to them and stuff like that. But I feel like it's just a term that's thrown around so much that like means so many different things to so many different people and so many different organizations that it's really hard to align on a definition. But that one of the other interesting things you said, right, is like talking about like the data security problem, right? And I think we're starting to see in the conversation that we've had so far, like this isn't just a cybersecurity problem anymore. Like this is literally becoming a large scale business operations and kind of governance problem as well, because most companies like we led with, they don't even know where all their data is. And you talked about like the crown jewels, right? It's like in most of my consulting days, and even when I was on the inside, like you ask that question, most people don't know. And if you get an answer, you get kind of like, this is where we think it is, right? But with SaaS products and services and apps and everything being like the sprawl, good luck. Like good luck exactly being confident and being able to verify where not only where all your data is, but just tell me where the crown jewels are. Like so we know how you're protecting them.
Well, and to have the consulting skills to really dig in. I remember one organization I worked for, I was talking to developers, and developers are always fun to talk to. And they're like, well, our source code is super critical. I said, okay. The whole thing, and I kind of got blank stares. I'm like, you're telling me literally the entire code repo is our intellectual property. And I kind of start getting some nods. I'm like, or is it, certain functions or certain ways that code's built up? Maybe it's a certain snippet in there, and that's, I mean, I'm using source code, but that could be the other sorts of data as well. Like, is it really that whole bucket over there that's sensitive, or is it just that piece? Or if you're in, I don't know, chemical manufacturing, right? Is it every single formula you have, or is it a super secret formula for that one thing you produce? Like, as a data security practitioner, you have to be inquisitive enough and consultative enough to actually be able to sit there and be like, and then, right, almost that, and then over and over again, like, all right, cool, I hear you, and then what, and what's next? So I mean, you've been in that space yourself. I mean, shoot, you and I met originally as you were on the consulting side. So how have you? Because I know you've had this discussion. How have you framed up those discussions to really get to that no BS? Here is what we truly care about.
I think with respect to me, and I'm going to use this as a small pat on my back. I think my natural authenticity, curiosity, and capability to build trust comes relatively easy because I don't feel most people, when we communicate back and forth, like it's like okay, like this guy's, he's not wasting time. Like we got stuff to do. We got places to go. Like I'm not kind of like a fluffy conversationalist. But when it comes to like specifically in kind of the consulting space and dealing with these problems, like I leverage that a little bit because like you talked about, right? I've practically done this as an operations person, an engineer, and all the way up to an architect to deploying this across multiple Fortune 500 companies. Geez, sorry. It's Friday. Starting to mentally fatigue out. Yeah. And then taking that expertise, right, and then being able to kind of provide the consultative side to it as well, I think is where that trust strengthens, because it's like, oh, like, okay, he's done this, right? And there's lingo, there's language, there's processes, right, that like companies have to follow, that when you kind of hear like okay, so are you going to deploy via like whatever the tool is, but yeah, you have a change management window. And once you start talking about that, like most salespeople or most consultative people are like, why can't you like just go do the thing? Like just go do it, right? But they don't understand, like, especially Fortune 500 companies, like the processes that need to be put in place and stuff like that. So I think that's allowed me to be successful in opening up those conversations, and then being able to solve the problems is just kind of encompassing all of that. And then to your point, kind of having that like, and then like, or deeper please, like where it's like, I don't want to hear some operational efficiency, risk mitigation, abstract comment. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Right. And if you can't drill it down to one of two things, a legitimate use case or a problem you're actually trying to solve inside your organization, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what I'm here for, because I'm just here for discovery questions. And I think that's what it's allowed me to do is I think I can just very quickly navigate that space because of past experiences, the technologies that I've touched, the places that I've worked, the people I've been around, the people I've learned from. I've had great mentors. I try to mentee some people as well. So like just learning from other people, I think has been helpful too in the consultative role.
I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, we've danced around it. We've teased it out. Man, you've been in the industry almost 20 years. You've seen a lot. You've done a lot. What's been your journey? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I hinted at it a little bit, right? I was that second tier of people that probably within the last decade or 15 years that kind of like started getting into cybersecurity as it was getting hot. Initially, I didn't even, I'll give you a little bit of a background story, because I think most people I talk to that are at least in this field or around IT, like they're like, oh yeah, I grew up like my dad or mom was a big computer person, or so-and-so worked at IBM or Intel, right? Like I, I was computer illiterate until probably the age of 19 when I went to college. Like I played with AOL Instant Messenger. I'm dating myself, right? Trying to see if my girlfriend was down the street or something like that. But that in video games was the extent of what I knew anything about computers, or IT or networks or anything in general. When I went to college, there was a great admissions person, and I still chat with her every now and then. Dr. Sylvia Perez Hardy at RIT. And she sat me down and she was like, look, I see you want to come into this. I think it was like IT security and administration. I can't remember the exact degree, but she was like, this thing, she's like, we will be the first school to be NSA accredited with an actual cybersecurity degree. And this was like 08 or 09. I can't remember. And I took a chance. I was like, okay. I mean, she seems like she knows what she's doing. I know I don't want to do what I was doing before, which was like engineering work. And I really actually wanted to be see the cars up there? Like I wanted to be a engineer with an automotive focus. So I got in there. I went to RIT, graduated. And I mean, the rest was just kind of like it hit the ground running with a decent exponential curve in learning and stuff. So I spent probably 13, 14 years across 4 Fortune 500 organizations in Florida. Went to the consulting side, spent 5 years there. Loved it. Everything about it was awesome. It was the exact jump I needed. a leader at one of my previous companies that I worked for actually was the one kind of to expose me to it. I actually knew the industry was there or how you infiltrated it, right? I was just kind of, you're like, oh, I'm just a security engineer or security architect for these companies. Like, that's what I do. He told me in an annual review one time, he goes, you're too smart to be here. He was like, you need to go do consulting. You need to go do something else, right? Once again, another great mentor and person I worked for, and we still communicate to this day. But if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have made that jump to consulting, which I then think is really what opened up my ability to help customers. Right? We talk about this, just problem solving. I could sit here and brainstorm on problems with customers for 30 minutes to an hour. Like it energizes me. It gets me exciting. Like the conversation's flowing, the brainwaves are going. Like that's what I really love. And I was good at it, right? And I think that just kind of parlayed into where I am now on the vendor side, being able to still kind of use those skills from the consultative side, but then also kind of still resonating with my customers and saying like, look, I know what you're going through. Like I've been there, I've done that, right? And especially with all this stuff with like AI and mythos and everyone freaking out about vulnerabilities and urgency and all that kind of stuff. Like I've told multiple customers, I go, just stick to the fundamentals. Like the speed and the urgency is going to change, but the fundamentals have not.
And they probably won't at the end of the day. I mean, that's why they're called fundamentals, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just think about it, right? And once again, love a good brainstorming exercise. Over the past, let's say 10 years, right? You think about all the major attacks and things that ended up in the news from a security perspective, right? If the fundamentals were in place, would they have happened? Maybe. But I bet the likelihood would have went down, right? It would have had a bit of maybe a more sophisticated attack or something else. But when the fundamentals are in place and you have that's why the SANS top 20 doesn't really ever change. Right? It's like, know your hardware, know your software, know where everything is, right? It doesn't change.
And isn't that funny, right? I haven't even thought about the SANS top 20 in a few years now, but you're right. It has not changed since I looked at it. At least to your point, not much. Maybe something moved up or slid down a little bit. I mean, think about how technology has changed, though. I mean, shoot, you and I started around about the same time. So, um, back when we started, it was, data center focused, and then, cloud kind of started. So people started shifting, figured out what that was, then proliferation of SaaS. And then I guess, I'm sure there's a few things between then and now, but now AI, right? But, and still, the top 20 is the top 20.
Yeah, the only thing I would have shimmed between SaaS and AI is probably Kubernetes and that whole that was a huge explosion. Like it was like 3-4 years ago, only maybe a small percentage of the world even knew the word, and like now it's everywhere.
Yeah, everyone knows it now. So I mean, quite a really cool background and story there. So if you go back in time, I don't know, maybe before you're going to that first program, and you can give yourself some advice, right? So if you can go from today back to a younger self, what would you have told your younger self? Anything? Any changes?
With all the knowledge that I have today, going back to talk to my let's call it 20-year-old self.
Sure. Yes.
Part of me wants to say like you're on the right track, right? Like don't deviate from what you're doing. But that's like it's short and sweet, and some people are like, okay, I got it. Like, but I'm trying to think of like if anything really like self-reflect. Like I took a lot of risk. Like I was one of those kids, and this is one of the things I talk to like the younger generation, like just getting out of college kind of thing. You have a decision to make in your 20s, right? 20, let's call it 20 to 30, somewhere in there. You can grind it out and really accelerate and try to separate yourself that from 30 and beyond. You can kind of, I don't want to say coast, but you can slow down. You don't have to grind it, any of that kind of stuff. Or you could have a ton of fun between your 20s and 30s, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you're probably going to have to work a little bit harder and a little bit longer, right? And like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. I went with the first one. I said, hey, I'm going to take a little bit of risk here. I moved all over, grew up in New York, lived in California for a while, now down in Florida. I was like 19 or I was 20, being like, all right, I'm going to California. Like, I just see what's out here. So yeah, just staying on the track that you're on. Take risks when you're young, when you can. Um, it's worth trying and experimenting with kind of other things and learning every day, but don't always think the grass is greener on the other side. Um, yeah, I talk to people a lot of times that kind of like jump companies every 3, 5 years and chasing money and stuff like that. Like it just becomes a point where you're just find what makes you happy. Um, have purpose, have some independence, and just kind of work with that. Like that'd probably be like the big thing for me.
I got some great insight, and hopefully, the 20s you would have actually listened if you had told him that, right?
I want to say he partially did, right? Because like I did spend a lot of time like working and kind of grinding it out. Didn't do a ton of like travel or fun things in my early 20s, but everyone's different. So I'm not saying my path was the right path. I'm not saying your path is the wrong path. I'm just saying everyone has their own path. And um, there's a great quote. Oh, it's gonna give me a second. It's the irony of life is you have to live it forward, but it only makes sense in reverse. So if you think about that, right, it's like all the decisions you kind of have made in your life, you kind of go back and go, okay, I guess I kind of made sense of why I did that there, but like you don't get that moving forward. So it's just something I always kind of think about too, is just like continue to live life moving forward and focus on the things that matter.
I had a mentor, very similar to what you just said, actually, very much similar to what you just said. The advice I had gotten is the decisions you make today will either open or close doors to you tomorrow. Kind of the same thing, right? Okay, cool. I'm going to make this decision. You don't really know, right? In the moment, like what's going to close or what's going to open. But looking back, it's like, oh, okay. Like if I hadn't done that thing right there, I wouldn't be doing this thing here right today. So
And whether it was a mistake or the right move, right? That's another thing is learn fast from mistakes, right? I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, not only from a personal and professional development, but like also from a technical development. Like I used to be that guy that would occasionally, well, I can't get in trouble for it now, make changes without change control process, right? Because I would see like active threats or, oh my God, why is this thing happening? Or what's going on here? Like this shouldn't be doing it that way. And I had such a good understanding of how data flowed in and out of networks that I knew with relatively high confidence that I could usually make these changes, and 9 times out of 10, I make it and nobody even knew, right? So going back to like an earlier point, like reducing risk of the company at like the speed of operations, like I did, but without change control, right?
yeah, you did it, but you didn't follow process.
Correct, right? And there's like the bad cybersecurity operations or engineer guy, but there were a few times, I will be honest, there were a few times I did it, and within a couple of minutes, you started hearing some screaming, and you're like, uh-oh, like, yep, I know what happened, I know exactly what happened, like go roll it back real quick, and at that point, depending on what happened, right, you'd kind of be like, yeah, my bad, like I was just testing something or whatever, but I've always been one of those people that kind of like find the very edge of what it can do, what it can perform. I remember sometimes vendors back when I was on the customer side being like, we really like talking to you or your organization because like you guys are really beating the heck out of this tool or whatever, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm throwing as much data or whatever I can at it. Like I want to see what it can do.
Got to do a real test for sure, for sure.
ROI, right? Go back to the business perspective. It's an ROI.
Tony, you mentioned earlier you've had some great mentors. You also mentioned that you mentee a few folks. So, I mean, if folks want to find you, reach out to you, and connect, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the easiest. I'll be honest, I'm not like a super active person. But usually a couple times a week, I'm logging in and kind of paying attention to some things. Probably the easiest spot to find me. Outside of that, I don't really have much social media. Not because I'm a cybersecurity guy. That's a whole different podcast. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way to find me.
Perfect. Well, hey, Tony, this has been a great episode. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's always nice to see you again.
Big thank you to the audience. Really hope you enjoyed the episode and learned something today. Please tell others in your network to follow and listen. This has been another exciting episode of Guardians of the Data. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Guardians of the Data. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes and more, visit guardiansofthedata.show. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centra. To see how we help organizations discover and classify all of their data accurately and automatically while quickly achieving petabyte-scale data protection without the fuss, please visit Centra.io. Catch you next time.